Recent studies have shown and discovered what babies are saying, and this is dramatic to your copy. I'm Justin Hitt from Ad Briefing's Copywriting Tips. So these scientists have translated what babies are saying and kind of doing this to understand a child's perspective of the world. And here's what they discovered. Babies are literally demanding of their environment everything. They boss their parents around. They tell them exactly when they want to eat. If a baby feels some stomach upset, they simply say, come here, investigate this, look at this. They are manifesting from their environment through demands those things that they want. If a baby is hungry, the baby tells their parents, come and feed me. Come feed me now. Come feed me now. And if it doesn't happen, their escalation of demands gets higher and faster. There's even some evidence that children will, so their concept of time is not very strong. And so a baby in the middle of the night versus in a day, if they're awake at night, they're just awake. They don't conceptualize that it's dark outside and they should be asleep. That's something you learn over time. But if a baby wakes up in the middle of the night and the baby is hungry, the baby will make a demand. They'll say, feed me. I'm awake, feed me. And if they don't get an immediate response, they will say it a little louder. I'm awake, feed me now. And then eventually they'll fall out and cry. What is happening from a child development standpoint, and I'll tie this back into our copywriting here shortly and how this works in influence. The baby, if they are immediately responded to, they have a different feeling of care and acceptance than if they have a delay in response. But what happens behaviorally to the adult is like a Pavlov's dog effect. If the baby cries and an adult runs in immediately, the more often they do that, the more conditioned the adult will be for the response, and therefore the child will be more expectant of a response. Therefore, as the baby cries, if they're not getting the response they expect, they will escalate the crying. Now, you might be thinking, well, every parent knows that. But it turns out that also the same behavior is with dogs. I took a behavioral class for animal psychology. I've taken human psychology classes. But in the case of dog behavior, dogs can be trained to bark a certain alert bark to have a door open so they can go outside and use the bathroom. If you immediately respond to the bark, they will be happier and they'll go right outside and they'll get exactly what they wanted. But through that, they now have a behavior they know that if they use that behavior, they get what they want. When you do not respond according to that behavior or that expectation, they will escalate sooner. So the ideal bit is to, again, establish expectations up front and stick to your expectations that you've established. But this is a primitive behavior. This is a behavior that's down deep in your brain that contributes to our expectation of magic. It contributes to our expectation of how soon should results come. It's a fabrication of all of our previous experiences. So a baby who cries and then is soothed and then given what they want will not be as demanding because they know that there's a period between the demand and the receiving that is conditional on their level of crying or their level of screaming. I'm not saying that you should ever withhold a response to a child, but the first couple of cries, a lot of the healthy childhood development programs talk about that you check in on the child. You don't immediately run in there on every whim because that running in on every whim trains them to then have an expectation that you'll run in on every whim. How does this work in copywriting? First off, humans deeply desire magic. They deeply desire to have money on demand. So if your solution helps a company reduce costs, it needs to seem almost magical, because in their brain, the person trying to solve the problem of reducing costs expects that they do just one or two things. What's the one thing that I do that will end up with the final result that I want? See, the baby doesn't know that that first cry is to another human who is sleeping. It doesn't know that first cry is to a human on the other side of the house. Maybe it's finally the mama's getting a break, but mama's on the other side of the house cooking dinner. In the first couple of cries, they didn't even hear, and now the baby's escalating. See, the baby does not know. That does not account for all these details. Maybe it's Papa. The father's home, and they're taking care of the kid, and they're not the primary caregiver, and the baby's crying the first time, and Papa picks up the kid and walks him around the house while doing noisy activities or watching a game or something. The child doesn't see all that. So when you have a customer who wants to lower their cost in business, and you have a solution that lowers their cost in business, and they know this problem exists and they want to solve this problem, they usually start by searching for answers, but they don't have enough information to know whether or not what they're finding is even useful. And so that pressure builds up. Now, you can connect with this pressure by providing, for example, a report that helps guide their behavior. It helps them understand the characteristics of the problem, because they may think they're spending too much and that's why costs are too high. Well, they may not sit down and think, well, costs are high in relation to earnings, therefore our profits are low. And really what we want to do is increase profits. That's what we really want as an outcome. They're not thinking about any of this stuff. They're thinking costs, lower costs. It's like a caveman brain. And it's not that they're dumb. It's just that's the most primitive part of their decision-making process at the point in which they have identified they have some problem they want to solve. Now, if you come in with the whole story and you start trying to educate them about profits and loss and capital gains and capital expenditures versus cash expenditures, business structure, and all this other stuff that's necessary to lower costs over time, and I'm just speaking from what I do on my business development consulting side, that person is going to turn off, because what they want is to lower costs. I want the one thing that's going to lower costs, and I want it right now. And if you think about, they're in a diaper and they got to pee really bad. And they're thinking, I don't want to pee and sit in my own pee. See, a baby knows that it's uncomfortable, that certain behaviors are uncomfortable. It's kind of a cause and effect. The baby knows if they crap their pants, it's going to be uncomfortable. The baby knows the baby's got to crap. And the baby knows if the baby craps, it's going to be uncomfortable. So therefore, I'm calling for help, and I need some help now. I don't need it in 20 minutes. I don't need it in 40 minutes. I need it now. And by the way, this is the behavior that adults have when they're under a lot of stress, when they have a lot of external pressures, and when they have just this, the pain is really built up, but they haven't really quantified or framed out the problem enough to take a decisive action. So when you reach the majority of your prospects, they're going to be in this animal brain, this immediate need. I know I got a problem, and if I don't lower costs, it's going to hurt and be uncomfortable, and I don't want to hurt and be uncomfortable. I want help right now. And see, that's why often they'll hire the wrong person. That's why they might try 4 or 5 things and not have good results. All those contributing factors that build up sales objections, all those contributing factors that build up concerns and misconceptions that structured in their brain their self-perception of their ability to solve the problem. Maybe you have the right solution. They're convinced you've got the right solution, but they're afraid that they're going to mess it up for some reason. So the same thing with a dog. We've trained our little dog Zola. She's currently pretty old and she's blind. But the one thing she knows that if she sits in front of a door and presents a certain type of bark is that someone will open that door. Now, we might not always open it immediately, and the bark might start a little bark, and then later it might be 2 barks, and then it might be a little bit louder bark, but she is essentially saying, I want to go through this door, and I know that a bark opens this door. Now, she doesn't know that I'm downstairs working in the office, or that maybe nobody's even in the house, or even if she's sitting in front of the right door. She just knows that according to her experiences, a bark opens doors. Now, if she's barking inappropriately, I can delay the opening. But if she's barking because she's got to go to the bathroom, then I can open and take her out for a walk. But there are certain responsive elements that you need to have. Now, when you're writing copy and you're doing this in print, the customer has found your website, they've responded to an ad, you've got to go back in with that basic information. You have a need as a customer, and you understand it to be such and such. Now, I'm not denying that that's not true, but there are other things to consider. And you have to show those considerations in the context of what their desired outcome is. So a dog that's barking at the wrong door, you need to be able to go quickly, respond, reorient, and then put them through the right door. Now, when they were barking at door number 1, and they know they want to go, this bark opens doors. And they're now barking at door number 1. I've identified it's the wrong door. I can't just grab the dog and put him in front of another door because they know door number 1 was the door that they wanted. It takes a little bit of coaxing. It takes a little bit of sharing that gap information, bringing them to the next step. A baby who wants to use the bathroom and is saying, hey folks, I got to pee. I don't want to be uncomfortable. To reach that type of person, you have to find ways to get in there earlier. So in your lead generation, for example, rather than lead generating right straight into a sales funnel, you can lead generate for the type of buyer. Are you facing cost reduction measures and you're concerned about the approach hurting your bottom line? Now, they might not even be concerned about the bottom line. They could be a division manager and they've got a telephone system or telecommunication systems, and they're concerned they're paying too much for telecommunication services. You may need to focus it all the way down. So you got to look at your list, and then you focus it down. So let's say it's a facilities manager. Are you a facilities manager interested in cost reductions for your manufacturing facility? And just leave it at that. Get them to raise their hand for the one thing. You're now incrementally bringing them into a lead funnel, which then will educate them about what category of facility cost management that you want to be concerned about. So if you're a manufacturing facility, are you concerned about utility power? If you're a data center, are you concerned about telecommunication services? If you're a retail facility, are you concerned about theft and shrinkage? You're building a chain of communications which takes them down a path to clearly identify first, what was the catalyst? What was that fear? What was that impending event in which they're raising their hand and saying, I'm scared, I want some help, I need some help, I don't want to be uncomfortable, I don't want to crap my pants. And you're stepping in at the appropriate time. If you step in too early with a solution, it overwhelms them or it builds an expectation that you're just going to immediately be available. That's why we have paid consultations instead of a free consultation. That's why a consultation is a development of a characteristic of a solution rather than a development of the actual solution. Because if their problem was so easy you could solve it in an hour consultation, then why would they want to move any further with a more complete solution? Now, because you're providing solutions, you're providing copywriting services, you're providing business development, you're providing marketing management, you know how complex it really is. But when your customer wants to buy marketing, they don't ask for buying market. They don't want to buy marketing. They want customers. They want to snap their fingers and have customers magically appear. They want to transform cold lists into hot buyers with money in hand, like Gary Halbert described, the hungry crowd. And in order to get your customer from hungry crowd, I want a hungry crowd right now, to marketing services, market research, business process, customer targeting, profitability studies, and all those other things that are necessary to get a hungry crowd that's worth having. You don't want a mob. You've got to go through the training. So to keep an old dog from crapping on your floor, you've got to go through the training. You've got to train the dog. to, in this case, use the appropriate bark and sit in front of the right door, and to understand that there are certain times during the day where you're more available than others. With a baby, the same thing. A baby needs to know that they're cared about and that they're checked on and that there's an attachment there, so that when they have a fear or concern about as simple as crap in their pants, they know that someone's going to respond so that it doesn't escalate so quickly. Now, that baby becomes an adult, so your leads eventually become customers. How you treat those leads in the sales funnel. So, for example, if you're immediately available when they call you and you're all over the phone and you answer every question they have and they feel real comfortable moving forward on their own, then you're not going to get a customer. They're never going to mature. They're going to go out and fail, and they're going to get into something and not really understand it. See, a baby can't change its own diaper. A dog feels shame when it pees or poops on the floor. They don't want that feeling. So by giving them enough to get them started, and then they go hang themselves and thinking that them failing and having that discomfort will cause them to come back to you, that is it doesn't fit in the thinking capacity. It doesn't fit in the way the primitive brain is working. And what will happen is they're going to associate that failure with you. But if the first interactions help them discover the characteristics of the challenge that they have, and some approaches, sometimes it's many approaches, and some kinds of means of evaluation, and then you'll take them by the hand and help them evaluate and develop a plan and get started, you can very often take them from the immediate desire, from the cost reduction example, the immediate desire of cost reduction into a more complete solution, which would include a measure of profitability with cost reduction and marketing as part of their contributing inputs. And through this, you'll now be able to provide a more complete solution. So this is something that's going to manifest in your copywriting. This is something that's going to manifest in when you approach your prospective leads. This is going to include how you interact with them. Do you use a survey? Do you use a quiz? Do you use something that walks them down the discovery? Or do you use a special report? You may also impact what problems you're looking at. When they had these problems, what did they do, and what are the reasons they didn't do something else? And all these things together come in your market research. Now, if you need help with your market research, we do periodically do workshops for market research, and we go into the steps and we grab a list and we start digesting that list and we start really understanding a market. So, for example, you can look at a market by zip code. You can look at a market by composition of different types of demographics and psychographics. You can look at a market from various perspectives that give you this deep understanding of what is that pain, what is that suffering. Gary Halbert and John Carlton and a lot of these other folks recommend you talking to customers, seeing them in their natural environment so that you can develop an understanding of their needs. But there are systematic ways to look at the timing. So how quickly do you respond, or how quickly do you get in front of them? You can also look at that lead cultivation so that you can develop a more complete solution. And you also want to look at some of their challenges and problems by even joint ventures, offering comparable products that lead into your larger, higher ticket service. Remember, everything in Ad Briefing's copywriting tips for the $1 Million Copywriter is a larger transaction value. This isn't about a $99 press release. When somebody wants a press release and they see a $99 press release, they grab the $99 because they have no other basis of comparison. They want a press release. But what they really want is new customers. And a press release might not be the right solution. So again, let me summarize. The brain of all individuals, adult, child, the brain of animals, is very primitive at some point. The core of your mind is you have a want, need, or desire, and if you don't get it, something horrible is going to happen, and this is all in the context of your own personal experiences, and you just want it. You're not thinking about all the characteristics of the problem. You're not doing all this development that we do in a market research. But without understanding those other elements, very often people get the wrong solution. So the baby who cries in the middle of the night and it escalates immediately may get a parent that's not very happy. And a parent may not be as careful and caring about their needs. as if they were able to, build up to it, or the parent was able to be more responsive. This is a constant cultivation of expectation and a constant cultivation of cause and effect. When you are able to expand these things, and market research is really where you start in understanding your prospects so that you can write and get them on your list early, cultivate them to choose the right kind of solution, and then put them in a sales funnel that's most appropriate for their needs. That's where copywriters are getting the bigger tickets. That's where copywriters are doing, for example, a whole marketing package rather than just a press release or rather than just a sales letter. That's where you're also delivering a better solution to your customer, which makes a better customer. Because as they mature, they understand they didn't just want cost reductions. They wanted increased sales, or they wanted lower costs in one area so they could have higher profits in another. The baby didn't just want to relieve themselves. They wanted a clean diaper, and they wanted always a clean diaper. So this symbiotic relationship applied to our copy, this understanding of the cause and effect in the mind of your customer and incrementally moving them towards a solution that is perfect for them, this makes you more consultative. This drives you for more complete solutions. This creates better customer satisfaction. A baby that has a high attachment factor with their parents before age 7 actually is a better citizen. They're less likely to get in trouble with the law. They're more likely to be healthy and happy. These are things that we can cultivate as copywriters, business development professionals, and marketers to have more valuable customers. And we're doing great things. We're helping people out. I'm Justin Hitt with Ad Briefing's Copywriting Tips. I know I covered a little bit more than I usually do, but I want to make sure you understood this concept of this primitive brain, this child brain, this animal brain that really gets you involved earlier. It gets you higher value leads. It gets you in a better cultivation cycle so that you can present to customers a higher value, higher ticket solution that they're going to be satisfied with, that they're really going to be happy. It's going to boost your referrals. It's going to do so much more. I'm Justin Hitt with Ad Briefing's Copywriting Tips. We're here to help beginning copywriters get started, but marketing agencies, business development consultants, copywriters, and marketers get past that $1 million level. You can visit us at www.adbriefings.co.uk, and we got a number of resources there. Be sure to get on our announcement list, and thanks for listening.